Hey sailors, welcome back to Cruising as Crew. My name is Lucy and today we're going to talk about when you should consider taking an excursion booked through the cruise line. So cruise lines always recommend that you do an excursion through the cruise line, that you book it on board. And the reason they give is safety. There's the safety aspect that you are not going to get left behind. The cruise ship is not going to leave without you, because when you book an excursion through the cruise line, even if that excursion is 2 hours late for the ship, the cruise ship has to wait for that excursion to come back, because obviously it's all booked under the company. However, if you went on an excursion that you booked externally and you were 2 hours late because you got stuck in traffic, the ship would leave you behind. So that is the major selling point as to why you should book a cruise through the cruise line. But the thing is, these excursions are usually quite pricey. So if you're doing an excursion every day through the cruise line, it can make exploring the ports very expensive. And sometimes it just isn't necessary. Sometimes you can explore the ports on your own and you will be fine. So I'm going to tell you in this video when you should take an excursion, like when it is worth paying the money. So the first instance when I would say it's worth booking an excursion is when the destination you want to see is more than half an hour away from the cruise ship port, and that's a half an hour drive. Half an hour walk, fine. So for example, the city of Rome is about a 1 hour drive away from the port of Civitavecchia, and Civitavecchia is the closest port to Rome. Now, it's Italy, and as much as Italians are wonderful, they are not known for timekeeping. I don't mean like Italian people, I just mean like the buses, the trains, you know, everything that's on a schedule, it kind of comes when it comes. So you can't really catch the train and know with absolute certainty that you're going to get back to the ship on time, because the train schedule really doesn't mean a fat lot, is what I found. And also, Rome is well known for its traffic. Getting in and out of the city can be an absolute nightmare. For this reason, whenever I went into Rome, when we were docked in Civitavecchia, I always went with an excursion done by the company. Because this way I didn't have to stress about whether I was going to get back on time. Because if I'd have done an excursion with an external company, or I'd have just gone there on my own, I wouldn't have fully relaxed and I would have just spent my whole time exploring Rome, clock watching and be like, do you think we should go? Do you think we should head back to the ship now? Because you have to leave loads of extra time just in case you get caught in traffic or the train's delayed. So for this reason, I think the best way to see the city so you can actually relax and enjoy your time is to do an excursion through the cruise line. But if you're thinking, well, I'm not really one for like group activities, I like to explore on my own, a lot of the time these cruise lines will offer explore on your own excursions. So basically, using Rome as an example again, they'll just give you a transfer to Rome and back. But it means that you don't have to worry about getting to Rome or getting back to the ship on time, because that is sorted. When you are in Rome, you can do your own thing. I did an explore on your own tour in Rome and it was amazing. Had the whole day to myself, wandered around, had some great food, went to a museum, completely pleased myself, and all I had to worry about was getting to the bus stop when they said the bus was going to be there. So first thing, if the destination you want to see is far away from the port, then it is probably worth doing an excursion with the cruise line. The second reason I will consider doing an excursion with the cruise line is when the place that we are is notorious for being a little bit unsafe. Maybe you're in Jamaica, maybe you're in Naples, Italy, where mugging is rife. Maybe it's known for crime, maybe there's political issues or political protests. If you are going to a place that is deemed unsafe, again, it's probably worth doing an excursion with the cruise line, because you have the security that the cruise line and the people on the excursion are going to look after you. So if you are going a cruise and you are unsure about the places that you're going, have a little look on the internet, see what everyone's saying, if it's dangerous or if it's not, and if you feel like a little bit iffy about it, just go on an excursion, treat yourself, one or two of the ports. So obviously in this video I am mentioning the 4 times where I think it's worth paying for an excursion through the cruise line, but if there's one that you think is relevant that I haven't mentioned, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to know when you think it's worth booking an excursion. Maybe it's a particular port that you would recommend booking an excursion for. Maybe it's on a certain cruise line, or maybe it's due to a circumstance, but let me know in the comments, because like I said, I would love to know. The third instance where I would consider doing an excursion done by the cruise line is when it is a tender port. This means that the cruise ship is unable to dock because maybe the cruise ship is too big for that particular port. There are various reasons, but you generally have a tender port when the cruise ship is too big to dock in a specific country. So for example, Santorini in Greece is always going to be a tender port because there isn't a port really, it's just a cliff edge. So you have to get a tender over to the base of the cliff, and then you either have to ride a donkey, walk up the cliff, or get a cable car up the cliff. So using Santorini as an example, if you don't have an excursion and you wait for a tender on your own, you might not get on a tender till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. Then you get to the cliffside and then you have to get the donkey, the cable car, or walk up the side. So you probably won't even get into the city on top of the cliff until like 12 o'clock, because there's going to be queues for the tenders, queues for the donkeys, queues for the cable car. But if you do an excursion in Santorini, excursions will have first priority when it comes to tenders, which means you will be able to get on the first or second tender that goes out, which could be as early as 7 or 8 in the morning, which means that you will be able to enjoy the full day in Santorini. You won't be waiting around for donkeys. And if you're like me, I hate waiting for anything. I am really not a patient person. It's just not in my nature. I don't like queuing up, I don't like waiting. Tenders drive me nuts because it involves both of these things. So doing an excursion so that I can get on the first tender available and actually enjoy my port day is definitely something I would consider doing. Or I generally just don't get off if it's a tender port. Honestly, I think I've made a video about tender ports before, and I just don't get off if it's a tender port. It's just too much hassle. There's just too much waiting around for my liking. I would rather have a nice chilled day on board. And the fourth reason I would take an excursion booked through the cruise line is if it is your first cruise. Now this of course comes down to how much of a risk taker you are and how comfortable you feel. But what I found working on ships for 10 years, people who were on their first cruise really had a big fear of being left behind. So quite often if they got off the cruise ship on their own, they would end up coming back to the ship much earlier than they needed to because of that fear of being left behind. And also they would say, well, I haven't enjoyed it because I just spent the whole time clock watching, and like, oh, do you think we should head back now? And why do we go on holiday? So we can stop clock watching, so we're not on a time limit and we can just do what we want when we want. So actually this is a reason why a lot of people decide that they don't like cruising, because they're like, I go on vacation so I don't have to look at the watch. And I spent the whole time looking at the watch because I didn't want to miss the ship. So if you think that you are going to be one of these people, and hey, I was one of these people when I first started going on cruise ships. Like, I would get off for an hour and then come back because I was so scared of being late for the ship. So if you think you're going to be a clock watcher, then it's worth doing an excursion through the cruise line, because as I've mentioned, the ship will not leave you behind if you are with an excursion booked through the cruise line. So let's say your first cruise is a week's cruise. Maybe the first 2 ports you do an excursion, and then once you've got comfortable with how things work, you can venture out on your own. So those are the 4 reasons when I would take an excursion booked through the cruise line. I believe that those are the 4 instances when it is worth paying the little bit of extra money, sometimes a lot more extra money, but it's worth it. But most likely, if you've clicked on this video, you are going on a cruise soon, so I hope you have a fantastic time. I am going on a cruise soon. I'm joining Cunard Queen Victoria next week with my friend. I'm very, very excited. And of course, I will be bringing you along, so can't wait for that. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.